Great. And welcome, everyone. Welcome, Julie. You're not literally on the stage. You're with us virtually. So welcome. Sorry you can't be with us. So what we're going to do is talk about future energy and hydrogen in particular. But Julie, maybe before we get started, to give context for Fortescue Future Industries, is maybe take a look and understand the innovation DNA of Fortescue Mining, because I think that's important context before we get into the Future Industries organisation and what you're doing with green hydrogen. So could you kind of give us a look into the 15, 20-year journey that you've been on and the innovation DNA?
Hi, Peter, and hello, everybody. I'm dialing in here from Perth in Western Australia. Fortescue Metals Group is an innovative mining company. We're one of the world's largest mining companies in the world. When we started mining iron ore back in 2008, our operating costs were over $50 per tonne of ore. Within 10 years, they're less than $13 per tonne. And what drove that downward trend was innovation and technology, a lot of ideas from the workforce that just drove down those operating costs and made us a successful company. So it is in our DNA to set stretch targets, to generate ideas, and technology innovation underpins that. And one example, Peter, was our deployment of autonomous haulage at a commercial scale at our mine sites.
Yeah, no, thank you, Julie, for that. I think that's really important. And how important was Andrew Forrest is a true visionary and a real innovator himself. How important was his leadership in enabling that to happen?
Leadership is key in driving innovation, technology in mining companies. So you start with the culture, the values of the company that gets embodied in everyone, the thousands or even tens of thousands of people that work across the company to drive all those little ideas, those innovative ideas that drive improvements every day.
Great, and I will ask you one question about before we get into FFI. But I wrote down this fabulous quote when we talked a few days ago, which is, and this is relevant, is you have to have the guts to take risks. This is a very risk-averse industry, so I wouldn't mind you just kind of commenting on that, because I think it's a nice segue into FFI's creation.
You sure do have to have guts. Let me talk about the autonomous haulage again. We were the first to deploy Caterpillar's autonomous haulage at commercial scale. This meant that we have got huge haul trucks, hundreds of tonnes each they carry. And we deployed those with no drivers. We had the guts to deploy those drivers into other jobs. We had to make it work. Now we've got almost 200 haul trucks operating autonomously. Very soon it had over 30% productivity improvement. It increased safety significantly. And now we've moved over 2 billion tonnes autonomously, all because we had the guts to get started with it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So, yeah, I think risk-taking is often something that's avoided by the industry, and that kind of slows down innovation. So, Fortescue Future Industries, I think, is actually an interesting organisation, not only in the mining industry, but for any industry, actually, for a company to create this organisation that's future forward-looking and very focused around energy. Can you give us kind of some of the background as to why it was created and what its mission is?
Our board of Fortescue has been mulling over green hydrogen for nearly a decade, seeing if we can use this as a way to decarbonise our operations. And the planet is cooking. We need to take action, and we need to lead by example. And the chairman led a group of experts in 2020 around the world to 47 countries. And we learned a lot about green hydrogen, renewable energy, and the opportunities to really help decarbonise heavy industry. So we've made a commitment that our Scope 1 and 2 emissions will be net zero by 2030, and our Scope 3 emissions net zero by 2040. World leading for a major mining company to make those commitments. But what's really important is that we've got practical, implementable solutions and actions underpinning how we're progressing towards achieving those.
Yeah, and 2030 is a very aggressive target for net zero emissions, and I'll be a little controversial now because obviously, a lot of investors are talking about, companies can make these announcements, but they need to show a science-based roadmap. What's the confidence level in terms of the roadmap to get you there?
We have a high confidence level, Peter. We've already commissioned solar panels that's already decarbonising our stationary power at our Christmas Creek operation in the Pilbara in Western Australia. And in terms of decarbonising our mobile fleet, this is the biggest challenge.
Yep.
We, on our operations right now, use over 700 million litres of diesel per year. So we need to do something. But we, in just over 100 days, our chairman gave our team a stretch target, team, get a hydrogen-powered truck operating for me in the workshop environment. In just over 100 days, the team achieved that. Thousands of parts from all around the world, hundreds of ideas, team working together, collaborating to really make that happen. And we got a hydrogen-powered truck operating, the first in the world to be operating. We also got a hydrogen-powered drill rig operating and a locomotive running on 80% ammonia on a pathway to 100% ammonia. Yeah. And this is all just done in a few months at our workshop here in Perth. And the next step, Peter, is to make sure we get these operating in our operations, prove them in the operating environment, and then start converting our fleet to be diesel-free by 2030.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic, Julian. I think one of the points I took away from that, your remarks there, was that you know, if you do ambitious targets, you've got to give the workforce and the organisation the freedom in which to kind of do things differently to enable that to happen, because business as usual won't get you to an ambitious target. So actually talking about ambition, I noted I was listening to Andrew's speech he gave in October last year to the Reuters Impact Conference just before COP26, and he was very passionate around this issue of net zero is just something that shouldn't be talked about, and we should talk about absolute zero. And I thought that was kind of an interesting provocation from him. And it's not an often used term, absolute zero. Can you kind of give us a little background as to what he's talking about there and why he's so passionate about this, and the organisation, obviously?
One of the issues with net zero is you can get to net zero by buying carbon offsets and actually not doing anything practically real to decrease your carbon emissions and decrease your pollution. So what we need to do is, instead of investing in carbon offsets, invest in real solutions that actually decarbonise your industry. So we definitely support regenerating forests, biodiversity, saving rainforests from getting cut down, but that should happen anyway. What we need to do is actually invest the money in decarbonising industry. Yep. And it's not going to be easy, but we've got to have the guts to do it, and we've got to start. Those projects have got to start. We've got to lead by example and make it happen. So this absolute zero is about eliminating all your carbon emissions get as close to zero as you possibly can in what you pollute into the atmosphere. Yep. Net zero means you just go buy offsets and sort it out that way. That is the cheapest way. That's greenwashing. So we are very passionate about doing everything we can to eliminate the cause of the pollution in the first place.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think that makes you a real leader in the industry in that kind of thinking. And I think, absolute zero is a nice pivot actually into green hydrogen. And, it's interesting, being here in the Kingdom, obviously they have one of the largest green hydrogen, if not the largest green hydrogen project in the world. Obviously with their renewable energy, so they're targeting 50% renewable energy for the Kingdom and green hydrogen. So can you kind of give us a kind of perspective on the green hydrogen strategy, which is a global one, very ambitious. So would you like to share that with us, please?
Peter, there's many hard to abate sectors: heavy haulage, rail, shipping, aviation, heavy industry. Green hydrogen is a key contributor to be able to decarbonise those hard to abate sectors. And green hydrogen derivatives such as green ammonia and other green hydrogen related products. Green electricity, renewable electricity should be used wherever it makes sense, and so should battery electric vehicles running off renewable electricity. But green hydrogen is absolutely going to be key in decarbonising these hard to abate sectors, which is why it's so critical for us as a mining company to look at using it for our heavy haulage haul trucks that have to go long distances, haul heavy pieces, heavy material. We're looking at it in green ammonia for our locomotives, converting our ships to run on green ammonia. And meanwhile, the stationary power in our operations, yes, that should run off renewable electricity such as solar and wind. So it's about being sensible, but green hydrogen is a key component of decarbonising heavy industry. That's why our focus is there, not just to decarbonise our own operations, but to be a provider of the world in green hydrogen. And we have a very ambitious target to produce 15 million tonnes of green hydrogen by 2030 from our global projects. We just don't have projects in Australia. We've got people now in 23 countries around the world aiming to develop projects globally.
Yeah, 15 million tonnes, that's an ambitious target again, so I like ambitious targets. So just could you give us kind of a description of one of those projects that you find the most interesting? Because I know you've got projects in New Zealand, where I spoke for the New Zealand Prime Minister on the just transition to a cleaner energy future. And obviously, hydrogen was a big element of their progress towards a net zero future. But yeah, can you just kind of unpack maybe one of those projects that you think is very interesting and we could take some lessons from?
I think an important project that we're focusing on is in partnership with Intertech Pivot in Queensland, in Australia here. It's an ammonia plant that is running off fossil fuels right now. We are working with them to complete the studies to show that that can run on renewable electricity and green hydrogen to feed into their ammonia production. This will actually save jobs, create opportunities for retraining in this new industry, and show that green hydrogen, green industry can lead the way in decarbonising heavy industry. I think that's a really important project to show as a first step to decarbonising existing industry, as well as obviously those greenfields projects where we'll be developing wind and solar in the Pilbara to decarbonise our own operations through the use of renewable electricity, green ammonia, green hydrogen. So there's a lot of examples, but decarbonising existing industry is going to be key to get some runs on the board.
Yeah. So I'll ask you a provocative question. So it's often written that hydrogen is the energy of the future and always will be. So, which says, we've been talking about hydrogen for many decades, and we understand it to be, the best option for so many things. So what do you think makes it different now for hydrogen than in the past, and why that statement is probably not, we should put into the trash can of history?
Peter, there's many reasons. The cost of renewables is coming right down, and that renewable electricity can now go into electrolysis of water to generate green hydrogen. There's also the technology of that hydrogen production process itself using electrolysis. There's been a lot of technology developments in that, and still more to come, of course.
Yeah.
So the technology is there. We've got to deploy it at scale now, Peter. So there's several things we need. We need scale. We need manufacturing of these key components to support the green hydrogen industry. And we need continuous development of technology and innovation to keep driving those costs down and make it as competitive, more competitive than fossil fuels. So people in the future won't even be considering the use of fossil fuels because the green alternatives will be as cheap. Yeah. That's where we need to get to.
So are you saying, I might paraphrase it back just to get confirmation. So are you saying really all the technologies that we need are available? The innovation is really around improving those to get to a point of cost of production that is comparative to other forms of energy, and is that the main area that we really need to focus on?
The technologies are available, but Peter, they can continually improve to keep driving down the costs and get better efficiencies. I mean, that should always be a part of what we're aiming to do. But they're available now. What we need to do to make it more economical is deploy it at scale, and that's why very small green hydrogen projects, they'll prove the concept, but they won't drive the cost curve down. So Scale is key, and continually to improve the technology will be key.
Okay. And last question, and then I'll ask you to kind of give one final thought or takeaway for the audience. But infrastructure, people often talk about infrastructure, and I was at the Ministers' Roundtable here before the conference, and we talked about infrastructure being critical to developing the industry in the region here. So because we often talk about the transportation infrastructure needed to move hydrogen around, do you guys leaving that to someone else, or are you having a role in that, and how important is it?
Fortescue Future Industries is focused across the whole value chain, and we are, of course, doing research and development across educational institutions. We're partnering with other technology providers. We're acquiring various technology companies. This is really an important aspect, this transport of the products. If you can transport domestically and decarbonise that country where you've got the projects in the first place, that's obviously a win. But there's a lot of technology, a lot of work going on the transportation of hydrogen, but these first few projects will be hydrogen via green ammonia because that is the easy way to transport green hydrogen right now.
Great. So I'm on the red part of the clock now, which means we need to get off soon. But one final thought, if you think there's one key thing you would like everyone here to take away from our discussion, what would it be?
It's really important that we have industries and companies working with governments, working with communities. I've travelled around the world a lot in the last few years, visited about 50 different countries, looking at opportunities for Fortescue Future Industries. And where I see the fastest progress is where government vision and leadership, working with community leaders and the companies, is driving these forward, where there's clear, efficient approvals pathways for green hydrogen projects, where there's clear community support. That's where those projects will get done first and fastest, not necessarily where there's the best renewable resources. So it's really important that leaders stand up and we all work together to help save the planet. The planet is cooking. We need to lead by example and take action.
Great, and I'm glad you brought communities into the picture. Julie, thank you very much. I appreciate your time in Perth, and if everybody please join me in thanking Julie for her time today. Thanks.
Thank you.